the whole Darby O'Six show start? How did that get started?
Well, as I remember it, the management of the television station came down to the television floor one day. At the time, I was running camera and doing some booth announcing at the TV station. And he said, we're going to have a children's program, and we're going to start about 2 weeks from now, and you're going to be the person that's going to be in it. I said, oh, I don't know that I've ever done anything like this before. And they said, well, this is what the format's going to be in terms of the name of the show, and we'll work out the details as we go along. I said, all right. Well, that was about the last time I had talked with him about that project until it got on the air 2 weeks later, and pretty much from that point forward, it was up to me to put it together and see if it worked or not. So it was sort of fun.
Did you even like kids?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting. I over the years, and maybe it started with the Darby program, but prior to that, I had taught like Sunday school and things like that a bit. But since that time of the Darby show, I had picked up a degree in speech pathology from Northern Michigan, and went down to Flint eventually after I left TV6, and became involved in education, community education, and then also joined really the Montchgrod's Health Center, where I stayed for over 30 years, and eventually became CEO there for about the last 15 or so, and I was very involved with child advocacy in the Midwest and nationally, working with handicapped child issues, special needs kind of kids, child abuse, teen pregnancy, things of that sort. So, been very involved with children really all my life, teaching at the elementary school level, and then eventually teaching at university for about 10 years as an adjunct professor.
So that was perfect for you then.
Well, I'm not sure whether whether we're talking about a chicken or an egg thing. I'm not sure what came first. Whether it was the Darby show that came first and the rest of it followed, or whether I had that interest at the front end and the Darby show just sort of fit right in.
Okay, so now you were the main person, Darby O'Six, but who are some of the other people that were on the show with you and the characters they did?
Yeah. Well, a fellow by the name of Bart Sprato, and Bart may have been involved at other TV6 projects over time, maybe like a sports show, and he ran puppets. Chip Tassin, Salvador Tassin, had done sports at the time, and he would occasionally make a guest appearance as Joe Spumoni, the Italian leprechaun. And then we would have Dick Addis, who was a weatherman at the time, and he would do a puppet or two as well. So it was a collaborative affair, but when you got right down to it, neither myself nor the puppets were the stars of the show. The kids were. That the way we had sort of put it together was that really children have things to say. They have interests that can be heard, should be heard, and they're pretty clever sometimes at how they communicate these things. So the kids really were the stars of the show. We just gave them an opportunity to be a part of it.
Now, did you have a catchphrase that you used?
No, not really. I was pretty talentless when you got right down to it. Rather, I just tried to get the best out of the kids and the situations that occurred. We tried to teach, or we tried to deal with kids respectfully, where they felt that they were being heard, and we tried to teach them some things along the line. We would get people in from, for instance, the conservation department. I remember one time a mother bear had been killed in an auto accident, and there were a couple of cubs that came in with the conservation officer. We talked about bears and what they eat and where they live and what's going to happen to these cubs, etc. When a circus came to town, for instance, we would have animals or performers in to talk about what they do. I remember specifically one thing, one instance cited in Carl Pellenpau's book. I don't know if you have read that passage, but we had a python in as part of the circus, and the python and his handler was being interviewed by myself. Well, the python didn't like the bright lights and heat of the TV station and studio, so it was looking for a shady place, and started to crawl up my leg a little bit, and it didn't seem to be quite right for me or the handler, so he took the python, put it back on the floor, and it started to go toward the cameraman, who at that time was Carl. And Mr. Pellenpau sort of let go of the camera handle. It went up into the light somewhere as he ran toward the studio, ran toward the control room, I should say. So we had some interesting episodes in the course of time, but all of the time we tried to keep an educational perspective. We tried to have an opportunity for kids to see how things like television worked, and it became something that a lot of them remember.
So, and obviously it sounds like live was a lot of fun. Now, there was also a lot of other things, though, that were happening in the studio. Bruce Turner was saying that a lot of times you were working your show when they were getting ready for the news. Did those two things ever collide?
Well, some of those things did, as a matter of fact, and maybe viewers are aware of the fact that things that go on behind the scenes oftentimes are far more entertaining than what goes on across the airwaves. But yeah, there were opportunities for for mishaps, because when you're dealing with things live, if it came out of your mouth, it went over the air, and it was out there whether you wanted it or not. No such thing as videotape at that point, and everything was live, so you didn't have a second chance. The result was occasionally you'd run into, as you're interviewing a child, for instance, they would get into topics that might be sensitive or whatever. I recall one instance where I asked a young boy, I said, well, do you have any brothers or sisters? He said, no, but my mom and dad are working on one. At which point I decided I better not pursue this discussion, but during a commercial break, I found out that the parents were trying to adopt a sister or brother for the young guy. So, there are things that are very interesting in retrospect, but at the time, it was live, and you never know where things were going sometimes, and hoped for the best.
Sure. And it sounds like you've got so many great memories. This next one may be tough. What was maybe one of your favorite shows that you ever did?
Oh boy. Well, I think just some cumulative things. I always enjoyed doing the telethons, the March of Dimes telethons, where kids would come in all bundled up with their winter clothes, with quarters or dollars or things they had collected to put into an aquarium for March of Dimes at that point. And that was always good, because I not only had a chance to meet the the kids, but also their parents, and talk with them a bit. Um, but there were other things. In a way, the program was a little bit of an adult children's program, if you can say it that way, uh, because I had the opportunity to be on the air for about 45 minutes live every day, like 5 days a week. That was a lot of airtime to fill. And so when things came to town, and I mentioned, for instance, things like a circus or whatever, you'd get to interview some people that may not be directly involved with kids' issues, but at the same time were interesting in their own way. For instance, over the 4 or 5 years, I think I had 4 Miss Michigans on the show for times that they were in the area for some event, and also a Miss America, and so you had kids that were sort of taken by the celebrity of some of the people who would be coming through the area, and have the opportunity for me then to interview them, and how did they get to their positions, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really hard to say. Probably the kids were really the stars, and that was the most memorable part of the show for me, I think.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for joining me for a few minutes today, and letting me get some information about what the show was all about and your part in it. We're excited that we're celebrating our 60th anniversary. Hard to believe it's already coming up, though.
Well, and it's hard for me to imagine that. I guess I should appreciate the fact that Channel 6 takes the opportunity every so often to bring out the dinosaurs of the broadcasting world, because in our case, I think the program was on from like 1960 to 1964 or thereabouts, and a lot of change has taken place. I've thought about what the program would look like today, and given the way everything has been commercialized, I mean, they'd be selling derbies with a little 6 on top, or vests or things of that sort. I mean, everything has brand written all over it, and so the program may have been very different today. I know it would be,
Sure.
because you'd have electronic screens, you'd have opportunities for the very special effects that you see on TV every day. And our idea of a special effect back in the 60s was, well, let's just sort of fade out of focus here, or zoom the camera in, and that's a gee whiz kind of effect as compared to the kind of electronic wizardry that goes on today.